Hello and welcome to Anime Style. I am Garion Reaver and today I'm going to be reviewing the 6th episode of Miss Kobayashi's Dragon Maid, but with a slight difference. Normally each episode of this series I review an episode of the anime, summarising the plot and talking about my thoughts on it, but this episode has a lot in it. Therefore I'm splitting it in two, with this one looking at the Riko home visit and Fafnir, and next time talking about Lukua. Today it's episode 6, Home Visit, and Homes Not Visited.
It's the best!
I've been dreading this one. Warning, this episode contains dodgy content. We open with Kana and Riko walking home from school. Nervously, Riko invites Kana round to hers. Kana asks if it'll be fun, and Riko enthusiastically tells her how good her house is, mentioning that she also has a maid, and Kana can invite Toru if she wants. Kana blankly agrees and Riko does the weird thing. After the opening credits, Kana, Toru and Red, remember that's what I call Kobayashi, arrive at Riko's. Toru declares that she took the mention of another maid as a challenge, but Red asks Kana why she had to join them as well. Kana says it's because Red knows the most about maids. Riko happily greets them at the door and is confused to see Red. Kana introduces her as her guardian, and Riko timidly says that it's nice to meet Kana's mother. Just gonna point out, they did meet 2 episodes ago. I don't know why Riko reacts like she's never seen her before, considering she's been round Red's house and stood next to her during the dodgeball. The reason for Riko not knowing her is for her to think that Red is Kana's mother, prompting Red to ask if she looks old enough to be her mum. Toru tells her not to worry, as she herself is old enough to be every human's mum. I think that's more of her blissful exaggeration. Down the stairs comes Georgie, who Riko introduces as her family's maid. Red has a minor breakdown while Toru is criticising Georgie's maid outfit, leading her to have a very understated rant. She flails her arms, but this doesn't match her tone of voice or what she's saying. Georgie explains that her outfit is all she could afford on a humble maid's wage, and she and Red instantly bond, distressing Toru. For the second time this episode, Toru shouts something that people would react to, but there's just no acknowledgement. Georgie exclaims her admiration of Toru as she's heard about her in the shopping district, and Red is incredibly enthused, grabbing hold of Toru's arm and practically dragging her upstairs with Georgie. Riko invites Kana to play in her room, and I'm just going to state once more that this episode contains dodgy content. You have been warned. Kana flops on Riko's bed, which has the effect you'd expect for someone who has an inexplicable obsession with her, and Kana asks to play the game she can see. It's Twister. Riko explains the rules, and to aid in the game activates an automatic voice box that chooses who puts what, where. Look, Twister's a difficult game to talk about without everything sounding suspect, so you're just gonna have to go with it. It'll dawn on you somewhere in this scene that the 2 young girls playing this are wearing a dress and a skirt respectively. Probably goes without saying that these are not appropriate Twister attire. They make very liberal use of camera angles, and frankly I have no idea how this scene got approved. It is mercifully short, leaving Riko steaming on the floor. I warned you, too late now. Kana says she wants to play a video game, specifying a fun one, and Riko rushes to accommodate. In Georgie's room, she's preparing tea for them while Toru sits sulking on the bed. When Red and Georgie are discussing the kind of tea it is, Toru interrupts that she has also heard of that kind of tea. She's ignored when Red praises the beautiful teacups, and then asks Georgie what made her such a fan of maids. Just going to point out that Georgie was introduced as a maid, so if it's her job, why would she need such an interest in them to do it well? Red and Georgie happily discuss a book they both read about maids, each stating their favourite parts. Their conversation moves to the background, as in the foreground Toru sits back down, I'd say bored and unimpressed. Back to Riko's room, it gets weird again. Riko gets the game running and Kana tells her to kneel on the one cushion on the floor. She does so, and Kana sits on her. Why does she do this? Aside from being very uncomfortable for both people, physically uncomfortable that is, there's a bed right there. Given the relative size of the room and the TV, they could have sat on the bed and been perfectly comfortable. Kana leans against Riko and plays the game, while the latter has something of a freak-out. Kana then asks her if she's getting along with the children at school, and Riko says that because Kana is so good at everything she does, everyone likes her. Kana says that it feels different to her, that she can't explain it well, but she wants what Toru and Red have. She says it's special, and she likes that. I guess she's the first person in universe, other than Toru herself, who ships them. Riko seizes this opportunity and confesses her love for Kana, saying she wants to marry her. And, to be honest, this makes it better. If she said she wants to go out with Kana or something like that, it'd seem much too grown up. An impulsive proposal of marriage is exactly what children do. Then it's weird again. Like, yeah. Kana accepts her proposal, saying she's fine with that kind of close, pushes her to the ground and... I'm uncomfortable just describing this. Riko is obviously overwhelmed by her agreement, realising things are moving too fast, but at that moment Toru bursts into the room and is dragged back by the dark shapes of Red and Georgie. She implores Kana to save her, and that's the end of that. As they walk home, Red and Toru briefly discuss how Georgie is actually Riko's older sister, and not in fact a real maid. Chillingly, we get a shot of Riko lying on her bed, utterly confused and questioning what Kana would have done to her if they hadn't been interrupted. Cut to Kana staring wistfully out the window, muttering the words, dragon style. I'm gonna let that one sink in. At this point the episode moves on to Lukua's plot, and also her story, sorry, couldn't resist, but because that's a lot to talk about, I will do so next time. In this one, I'll skip straight over it to the third section of the episode. After work one day, Toru and Red wonder how Takia is getting along with Fafnir. Toru realises she hasn't seen him in a while, but Kana mentions she saw him in the park that day, jumping, spinning and mumbling. We cut to Takia's house, which is full of anime stuff. Admittedly, he said in the very first episode about his secret otaku side, but this is the first incredibly full view we get of what he meant. All of his walls and even his ceiling are plastered with anime girls in various levels of skimpy clothing. He and Fafnir are practicing some sort of routine, and Takia tries to give him the nickname of Fafkun. Fafnir completely doesn't get the concept, so Takia immediately drops it, but it's a very subtle way of showing how comfortable Takia has become in his company. After eating curry for dinner, which is specified as mild at Fafnir's request, they immediately begin playing a game against each other. Thing is, it seems to be the way they determine who does the washing up. As Fafnir lost the game, he's then seen cleaning the dishes. I bloody love that. They're then seen back-to-back on PCs, presumably Fafnir used some of his gold to pay for a gaming computer, then Takia asks him to try out the game he intends to sell at an upcoming convention. It's actually done as a really nice moment. Fafnir makes a recommendation about how to improve the gameplay, and Takia agrees he's right. While on an MMO, Takia asks Fafnir how much he plays it. Fafnir says about 21 hours a day. We then see the other players on their server typing to Fafnir, commenting how he always seems to be there. Fafnir gets frustrated when they insist on messaging him, clarifying that he isn't actually human. This is passed off as dedicated roleplay. That's when Takia remembers that he bought Fafnir some shampoo, saying it'll help him with his hair. I really do love how well they get along, and it actually makes me like Takia much more. The weird thing is that Takia doesn't seem to have a bedroom. He sleeps on a blanket on the floor between the two computers. It's possible that his bed used to be where Fafnir's computer is now, but that just raises more questions. We see Red and Toru in town, watching happily as Kana enjoys the rain. Toru remarks that she loves how happy Kana is with her new umbrella, then puts her own down to snuggle up with Red under hers. Red asks rather suspiciously what she's doing, and Toru informs her that it's called sharing a lover's umbrella. Red points out that she has her own umbrella, but Toru adorably says that she prefers Red's. Despite her protests, Red seems content to share it as they watch Kana. When Toru spots Takia and Fafnir walking on the other side of the road, Red is pleased to note that they seem to be getting along. Despite her dislike of him, Toru cannot help but comment how incredible Takia is being able to live happily with Fafnir. We get a bit of Fafnir's thoughts as he waits outside a shop for Takia. He categorises humans as hits or misses, noting that misses are obvious, but it takes longer to know if someone is a hit. We see Fafnir's dragon form as he muses that his favourite misses are the humans who try to steal his treasure, presumably as he gets to kill them. When Takia comes back out, he asks why Fafnir waited outside. Fafnir says that he doesn't mind, but also, out of nowhere, that Takia is a hit. Obviously Takia doesn't understand what he means, but it's a very touching moment for the viewers as this dragon who seems to absolutely hate humanity has found a human he actually rather likes. I suppose it seems obvious, but I never noticed that they're sort of mirroring Red and Toru. One of the final shots of the episode is two birds sat side by side on a wire, rather bluntly pointing out that the episode was all about the characters finding a friend.
So pretty.
I want to talk a little more about shipping Red and Toru. In this episode we found out that Kana essentially ships them, which made me wonder how other people they know perceive their relationship. Toru seems to refer to Red as her master, but I'd say more in a dominant submissive way than an employment way. I'll be frank, I know virtually nothing about BDSM, if that's even the right term for what this is, so I won't even attempt to speculate beyond that. From what we've seen so far, I'd say that Fafnir disapproves of her interest in any human. Kana looks up to them as a relationship to which to aspire, and that Takia may be the only human to whom Red's told anything about Toru. I'd say that as of this episode, Red still has no romantic interest in Toru, and probably doesn't fully know how she should be treating her at all. She dragged Toru with her when she rushed off to speak with Georgie, but then completely ignored her. This could be ordinary thoughtlessness when confronted with a fellow fan of her interests, but if that was the case, why would she drag Toru with her? It seems inconsistent, at least to me. Then when Toru shares her umbrella, she seems unimpressed, but doesn't insist on Toru using her own. Part of that is definitely Red's easygoing nature, but it's also a subtle way of showing them growing closer as, at least, friends. Last note on this, according to the Dragon Maid wiki, this is called Koba-Toru shipping. That is a terrible name. Even Kobato would be better as it flows more, or maybe Tobayashi, but I formally propose that it be renamed as Red Dragon Shipping, for obvious reasons. The whole thing with Riko this episode posed a question or two. If she was really going to do what it's blatantly implied she was, how does that fit in with her being the equivalent of a child? Toru said before that dragons don't have the same rules as humans when it comes to decency, but are we to assume that extends to intimacy as well? It's not pleasant to think about, but there was a lot of child marriage going on in medieval times, which appears to be the approximate time period of the dragon world. Maybe a combination of dragon sensibility and their medieval times created whatever that was. I don't particularly like Kana. Maybe it's supposed to be her age, her being a dragon, or whatever, but she comes across very entitled. Yeah, she says please, but she'll just change what she's after at a moment's notice and expect everyone to go along with it. Add in that her voice is very flat, and she comes across as disinterested in almost everything she does. The exceptions are when her eyes sparkle, but it's generally short-lived, and she goes back to silence or her flat voice. We got a good look at Red's maid obsession this episode, but you may recall me previously saying that it makes little to no difference to her character at large. It really doesn't. It served as a way to get Toru living with her originally, and they sometimes make the odd reference to it, but for the most part it never comes up. I'm not quite sure how to feel about that. There's the old writing adage, if it was removed would anything be lost, but the answer is maybe? It was an in-character way to have Toru live with her with a purpose, and I'm struggling to think of any other live-in job that Toru could have done instead, and maybe this is just them paying homage to it. A bit coincidental that Kana's best friend has a sister who's into maids, making that 3 characters on the show including Takia, but a lot of shows rely on coincidence as the sole driving motivation. Georgie doesn't become a main cast member or anything, so maybe we can just see this as thanks Maid Obsession for making the plot possible.
Interesting, I'll remember that.
Sorry about the double video on this, but it was the only way to stop it being extortionately long. I'm fairly sure this is the weirdest episode in the season, and there's just so much to talk about. I apologise if any of the content of this episode disturbed you or made you uncomfortable, but honestly, the worst of it is next time in Lukawa's story. Please leave me your thoughts below on this part, and I'll be back to finish episode 6. Thank you very much for watching, please consider pledging to my Patreon linked in the description, and I will catch you later.